The vision of Chavarayachan in the Milieu of Bharat. To delight in light. Light means wisdom. That is the meaning of the word Bharat. This light was provided by traditional knowledge systems, many of them which colonialism and decades of systemic ignorance slowly caused to fade. Every era is like a cycle. Not the cycle that you ride, but the cycle of causes and effects. That is the reason why we always find both progress and decadence embedded year after year in the same era. In every era, if we closely observe, we will find this continuity of a few years of progress followed by a few years of decadence. How does decadence then evolve into progress? Now, when I say this cycle is not a magic or a coded binary system wherein things have to happen in a measured way. Rather, it happens because even in the times of decadence, there are people with full and complete consciousness, something that is unique and higher than what most people would have. To realize that not only there is corruption happening, but substantive inaction to again push the decadence to further lows. Know that both realization and action are vital to initiate, maintain, and promote a noble cause. Now, when I'm talking about corruption, it is not the modern bribery or favoritism that you see in the papers. It extends way beyond that. I would like to cite 3 examples of systemic corruption to elaborate what I intended. Number 1, Bharat was the land of female empowerment, so much that women could choose to remain celibates, brahmacharinis, and also participate in yagas. Now compare this with the recent movement of all women walking out in the night only on a Women's Day to show empowerment. You may ask any of the women here that how many of them are comfortable walking alone after it is dark or while discussing with the society that they would choose to remain single. I'm sure the acceptance of the society would be very low, and hence they also will not want to express it. Sarcastically, I'm reminded of a recent viral reel where it is advised that single women should keep 1 pair of men's footwear outside the door to ward off all possible dangers from the society. Let us move to the second example, the Indian Constitution, supposed to be an untainted book. The word untainted does not have reference to amendments, rather has a reference to only about the dictates. Any child who is pursuing a compulsory course in civics or constitutional values will be able to understand that the holy book of Bharat, the Constitution, says much about the responsibilities of the individuals to preserve the freedom we so very cherish. And yet, this book today is interpreted more about rights than duties. No wonder we, a pluralistic society, are consistently and continuously reminded of divisions than unity. These days, we speak about castes and subcastes and multiple genders and priorities and grants without any discussions on the basic human responsibility of harmonious living and brotherhood. What we do not understand is that one sustains the other. And to maintain a decent society, this understanding is very important. The third example that I want to cite concerns about parental responsibilities. Not even 1 day passes without newspapers reporting about the human rights violence parents commit against their own biological children, be it honor killing, encouraging abuse, etc. American writer Lisa Wingate's words are worth mentioning in the context. Parenting is about guiding your children to discover their own paths, not paving the way for them. A thing that many fully comprehend. Do you think? No, not many fully comprehend. These days, neither many people want to marry nor have children because they tend to foresee that parenting would eventually tie them down. Speaking from a social angle, the example of how China went from its one-child policy implementation in 1979 to the official removal of it in 2015, adding incentives to the scheme including parenting subsidies and tax breaks is a live illustration. Even in our land Bharat, the situation is not rare. Be it in opting sannyasa or be it in opting lesser responsibilities and freer lives. Parental responsibilities have to be a conscious choice that people have to make considering their ability or disability to foster a family. And it is considered far, far better than making the mistake of opting to foster a family consciously and not taking good care of them. In a nutshell, I have taken three examples. The first one, dealing with women equality and women's rights. The second one, dealing with responsible governance and citizenship. And the third one, dealing with healthy parenting. And I have tried to juxtapose decadent and progressive thought and actions in all these. There are many such examples of systemic corruption wherein a certain class of people is made to feel vulnerable, and then their vulnerability is further exploited as they are pushed down and suffocated. By class, I am not referring to the economic divisions, rather in the general sense of the term. Women could be a class, and again, subaltern women could be another class, or a class that is children, again, rural children, or a class of landlords, so on and so forth. It is through the progression of such systemic corruption consciously, deliberately, and yet so gradually that people are hardly able to differentiate between normalcy and corruption. It is in such circumstances of utter decadence when overall systemic corruption tends to be normalized that we require the aid of people who walk ahead of their times to slowly turn the direction of the society from decadence to real progression and then to restore the actual normalcy. Such great people are called visionaries and are found in every era. Because of decadence, there is a retrograde movement found in the society which they tend to block, and further they educate and empower the masses to join the battle as they lead, to guide, to swim against the tide. They are called visionaries because when all the people are walking in one direction, it is very, very hard to understand that not only is this direction wrong, but what they have to turn in the opposite direction and turn the masses too. That is, prompt others also to do so. We have great visionaries in all the eras whom we duly respect and salute till date for various many changes that they have brought in the societies of their times, and they have stood against the decadence of their era and drove their era towards progression. Be it Savitri Bhai Phule, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Swami Sri Narayana Guru or Chavarayachan. Whatever progression we boast of today, all credits are due to people like them. It is the cumulative progress achieved by these great visionaries that we proudly call our advancement or progression of the present era. To justify the points related to how ordinary people become extraordinary and how great people become great enough to be called visionaries, let us take Saint Kuriakose Chavara, Elias, popularly and fondly referred to as Chavarayachan, and compare what are the changes that he specifically brought in the society of his times with reference to the three examples of decadence I cited above. First, he understood the need of women's safety in case she chooses to abstain from worldly pleasures and founded the Congregation of the Mother of Carmel, CMC, in 1866 for women. Priesthood was largely a male domain till then. He also supported single mothers and destitute women of any caste for that matter and provided safe shelter and empowerment to them without the force of conversion. All great people have role models, other visionaries whom they glorify and regard as path breakers and lead models. Among others, Chavarayachan had the influence of the great Bhakti poet Tunjat Ramanujan Ezhuthachan, and his style of narratives had greatly influenced him to pen the Eclogues of Chavara. What is noteworthy here is that despite his skills as a playwright and a poet and a publisher, he encouraged women and men alike. Encouraged and motivated by Chavarayachan, that the first woman playwright, being a nun, a widow who had joined the congregation of the Carmelite order, is noteworthy in the context. This is said by none other than Kavalam Narayana Panikker, Indian dramatist and theatre director. Women's right to a life of spirituality, abstinence, and service to society was seen as prime importance for Chavarayachan. But those who wanted to pursue a worldly life, for them, widow remarriages were also encouraged. Quoting Abraham Maslow, I quote, "A good and healthy society is defined as one that permitted people's highest purposes to emerge by satisfying all their basic needs." One of his many works, Atmanutapam, is a very feminist writing, a genre that was not very popular during these times, though it could also be considered as a prominent work in Christian spirituality associated with the worship of Mother Mary. However, it would indeed be wrong if I don't add that the love for his own biological mother finds subtle and dominant traces to his love for the Divine Mother. Speaking of all these, surprisingly, rather shockingly, the topics of women emancipation and freedom are still relevant, even within the transition from the 19th century to the 21st century, not just in India, but all over the world. If you do not believe me, know that academicians worldwide still deliberate on the process of teaching or learning gender equity. Speaking of celibacy, Chavarayachan never hesitated to ponder and dwell upon the corruption prevalent among clergy. His serial dramas in Malayalam, Idaya Nadagangal, similar to the Western eclogues written between 1846 and 1855, is worth mentioning in the context, which brings me to my second example that caused decadence that I cited earlier. If responsibilities do not come far ahead of rights, Chavarayachan always recognized the idea of Bharat, something that is worth reminding to the present generation, because he never tried to implicate Western ideas of Christianity on the Malayali population. He recognized and acknowledged that Bharat has its own unique culture and it is worth prevailing and maintaining it. Be it in his ideas of implementing Sanskrit in his schools, Pallikudam, where every church will bear the responsibility, the shouldering of providing free education along with afternoon meals to all the people irrespective of their gender and belief systems. The recital of prayers at dusk after lighting the lamp, etc. There are many more things that he has actually implemented. He was massively articulate about the role of Christianity as located in the Indian milieu and not outside it, not as a separate and distinct entity, but he voiced the need for peaceful and harmonious coexistence, considering the pluralistic nature of the Indian society, a concept much cherished by the idea of Bharat. Bharat means, I reiterate, to delight in light, the light of harmonious coexistence, the light of plurality, the light of wisdom and truth, the light of peace and happiness, the light of Vasudeva Kutumbakam, of universal brotherhood. Much before our constitution was framed within the framework of these ideals, something that we consider as greatly holy, Chavarayachan had insisted on these values through his life and writings. Moving on to my third example of decadence in parenting. Nalla Appande Chavarul, the last will of a loving father, is like a Bible for parents. No parenting is and can be perfect, and yet it is a process of continuous trial and errors. But to make the process of parenting enjoyable and positively memorable, both for the child as well as the parent, is an important aspect of the huge responsibility. It clearly advocates guidelines for good parenting that will never lose its relevance as the years swiftly spin by. Not only it can be considered as an ideal book on human rights, but it is a testament of family units as the basic building blocks of a healthy society. Family is a deeply important concept in India where it defines the society at large. In Gautam Buddha's Mangala Sutta, also known as Mahamangala Sutta, it is said that to support mother and father, to cherish wife and children, and to have a simple livelihood, this is the best good luck. Mangal Sutta is the discourse of Gautama Buddha in Pali language. Mangala means auspicious and also translates to blessings, and Sutta in Pali means discourse, where he describes blessings. 38 of them spread across 10 sections that are wholesome pursuits of the self, identified in an advanced way to emerge from the mundane to the ultimate spiritual goal. If you would compare Chavarayachan's writings to all of these philosophical texts, you will not find much of a variation. It is not a wonder that Chavarayachan linked a healthy society to a healthy family and mundane to spiritual goals. Chavarayachan was born in 1805. I resorted to the term Chavarayachan and not Saint Chavara throughout because Chavarayachan feels closer to my heart, a term that I am familiar with even before his canonization. And yet not the familiarity alone here becomes decisive to use the term, rather the idea of fondness, the closeness and the connector bonding induced also by my mother tongue, which I feel, wherein the term Saint Chavara carries divinity, a sense of reverence. And I will continue to use Chavarayachan and not Saint Chavara. Now back to the examples I cited above. Needless to say, it is still relevant in 2025. You are free to do the math of how many years have passed and also contemplate on the relevance of these issues prevalent in the society then and now, and understand the concept of systemic decadence and the power of leading an entire generation of people towards progression and thus passing the test of time and transpiring to become a great visionary. It is for such good deeds. Chavarayachan was acknowledged by Pope John Paul II in 1986. It is called as beatification, and later on he was raised to the status of a saint by Pope Francis. The declaration reads thus: Father Kuriakose Elias Chavara was a religious, both active and contemplative, who generously gave his life for the Syro-Malabar Church, putting into action the maximum sanctification of oneself and the salvation of others. It may be impossible for any person to work outside the nexus of his belief systems, and Chavarayachan was also no different. Therefore, as a secular society, a focus should be on the latter part of the sentence, his description as active and contemplative, and also his description on being generous enough to devote his entire life for the cause of sanctification of self and salvation of others. To recollect the popular song, हमको मन की शक्ति देना मन विजय करे दूसरों से जय की पहले खुद को जय करे. To translate, give us the power for our mind to be strong. Before looking to bring out the good in others, give us the power to transform ourselves into a better person. This central idea is very important. Unless and until we transform ourselves, how can we go and try to make another living soul better? Chavarayachan like many luminaries, is an example of this practicality. There are many lessons that we get from Chavarayachan's life. I cannot deal with all of these entirely through this conversation that we are having. And somewhere, we are nowhere great enough to do justice to the noble soul. Even if we try to summarize all his achievements, including his persistent efforts that paved way for the recognition of the mighty Syro-Malabar Church by Rome in 1992 as an autonomous church with archbishop and synod of its own. That is why there are many books written on Saint Chavara. Nevertheless, writers and speakers can only vocalize a certain perspective. It is for you to discover the remaining perspectives. You may also go through the numerous works that he has penned. If you want to understand Chavarayachan's life story and his contributions in a very precise and concise way, I encourage you to read Maliha Raghavaia's book titled The Lodestar of Kerala Renaissance, where she has, with careful specification, detailed about the great saint's life and achievements in just one book. On this occasion, I not only congratulate the writer and publisher, but the entire team for bringing out this wonderful book. I would also like to make an appeal to each and every one present here to go through the great work. I thank Father John MANNARATHARA CMI, very good friend of mine, for having extended this opportunity to me. I wish and hope all of you enjoyed listening to me. Thank you.